Every year, the oceans supply the world with hundreds of millions of tons of seafood, creating an industry worth over $400 billion. Yet within that vast flow, only a very small portion is known as luxury seafood. So what makes certain ocean creatures become dishes worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars per kilogram? Is it their rarity, their extraordinary flavor, or the dramatic stories behind every bite? Stories of nature, human skill, and some of the most dangerous harvesting jobs in the world. Right now, let's step into the world of luxury seafood, where nature, human skill, and patience come together to transform the ocean's creatures into some of the most prized delicacies on tables around the globe. Now let's head straight to Taiwan, a true Batarga capital of the Chinese-speaking world, where one of the most prized seafood delicacies is produced: mullet roe, or salted gray mullet roe. Each winter, when cold winds sweep in from the East China Sea, the brackish fish farms around Tainan and Kaohsiung enter their most important harvest season. In waters where river and sea mingle, plump female mullets have spent months quietly building a small treasure inside their bellies. Brilliant golden-orange roe sacs, proudly known by locals as the gold of the ocean. When the fish reach about 1.5 to 2 kilograms, farmers begin drawing nets across the ponds, carefully selecting the mature females carrying the largest roe. Immediately after harvesting, the fish are rushed to processing facilities and kept chilled at 0 to 4 degrees Celsius. This careful cold handling preserves the roe's freshness, firmness, and premium quality before it moves on to the next stages of processing. As soon as the fish arrive at the processing plant, located not far from the farming ponds, they quickly move into the first stage of processing. Skilled workers begin their familiar task, using a thin blade to gently open the fish along the belly, then carefully removing the 2 roe sacs intact. This step requires both steady and delicate hands, because even a small tear in the thin outer membrane can significantly reduce the roe's value. Each mullet carries 2 roe sacs measuring about 15 to 20 centimeters in length, plump and heavy, the result of months of careful nourishment inside the mother fish. These golden orange roe sacs will eventually become the key ingredient in one of the most sought-after seafood delicacies on dining tables across Asia. Besides the roe, workers also remove the fish stomach, a small organ that is far from being wasted. Once cleaned and dried, it becomes fish maw, a prized ingredient in Asian cuisine, known for being rich in collagen and protein and commonly used in nourishing soups. When cooked, fish stomach develops a slightly chewy, springy texture and a mild, delicate flavor. After being removed from the fish, the roe sacs are first tied with a thin string at the stem to secure their structure and prevent tearing during handling. They are then gently rinsed in a light brine solution of about 2 to 3% salt to remove blood and surface impurities. This step requires particular care, as the thin membrane surrounding the roe must remain intact. It acts as a natural layer that helps the roe maintain its shape during the salting and drying stages. Even a small tear can allow salt to penetrate too quickly, causing the roe to dry out and lose its rich, fatty texture. On the other hand, if traces of blood remain, they can oxidize during drying, giving the roe an off flavor and a dull, discolored appearance. Next comes the sea salting stage, an ancient preservation technique that has existed for centuries in both the Mediterranean and East Asia. Coarse sea salt is evenly spread over each roe sac and left to rest for about 12 to 24 hours. But the salt here does more than simply preserve the roe. It works like an invisible sculptor, slowly drawing out moisture and concentrating the flavor, giving the roe a firmer texture and deeper richness. Once the salt has been absorbed, the roe sacs are placed between 2 flat wooden boards and gently pressed for several hours to up to a day. This step creates the characteristic flattened shape of batarga while removing excess moisture. After the shape has stabilized, The roe is briefly rinsed again to wash away any excess salt and prevent an overly harsh flavor. And this is where the question many people wonder about finds its answer. What transforms a few simple fish roe sacks into the gold of the ocean? The secret lies in the delicate balance of salt, time, and the skilled hands of the craftspeople. Next comes the step often described as an art form, drying in the sea breeze. The roe sacks are hung or laid on trays in well-ventilated rooms for 10 to 20 days, sometimes longer depending on the weather. During this time, gentle sunlight and the salty ocean air gradually dry the roe, turning its color into a deep amber while developing a richer flavor, slightly fatty, savory, and layered with a distinct umami reminiscent of sea cheese. People in the trade like to say, half-jokingly, that botarga is ripened by the wind because the sea breeze itself is what gives the roe its characteristic taste. When the roe reaches the ideal level of dryness, the finest sacks are vacuum sealed or coated with a thin layer of wax for preservation. The finished product, mullet roe, or botarga, can sell for $200 to $300 per kilogram, sometimes even more when the size and color are perfect. Just a few thin shavings over pasta, paired with a glass of wine, or lightly grilled over charcoal are enough for people to taste the essence of the brackish waters where the mullet once grew. And that is exactly what makes this delicacy so captivating. A small piece of roe that carries within it the story of tidal waters, sea winds, and the patience of human hands. Now let's move to Spain, where the rugged cliffs along the Atlantic coast are home to one of the rarest and most expensive seafood delicacies in the world. Gooseneck barnacles, also known as percebes. These unusual creatures cling tightly to rocks in the most violent surf zones, where waves can rise several meters high and crash against the shore with tremendous force. Yet it is precisely this harsh environment that gives them their remarkable flavor. Briny, slightly sweet, and intensely oceanic. Because they grow slowly and only appear in very specific rocky coastal areas, percebes have long been considered a rare delicacy, sometimes reaching $100 to $300 per kilogram during scarce seasons. Harvesting percebes is just as dangerous as the delicacy itself is rare. The harvesters, known as perceberos, climb down slippery coastal cliffs when the tide recedes, carrying safety ropes and specialized prying tools. They often have only a few short hours between waves to gather them before the sea rises again. Each barnacle is carefully pried off the rock by hand, because too much force can damage the delicate flesh inside. The job requires not only strength, but also courage, and in many regions it is considered one of the most dangerous fishing professions in Europe. After harvest, percebes are usually prepared in the simplest way possible to preserve their natural taste. They are briefly boiled in seawater or heavily salted water for about 30 to 60 seconds. The rough outer shell is then peeled back by hand, revealing the tender white meat inside. When eaten, percebes deliver a texture that is slightly firm, sweet, and intensely briny, almost like tasting a drop of the ocean itself. It is this combination of a harsh habitat, risky harvesting, and minimalist preparation that makes gooseneck barnacles one of the most sought-after seafood delicacies in the world. There is a fascinating story beneath the ocean that few people know. Sea urchins have long been famous among food lovers, but under the waves they are actually the arch-enemy of damselfish, a species often nicknamed the farmers of the ocean. Damselfish have a remarkable habit. They cultivate their own gardens of seaweed on rocky reefs. Day after day, they tend these gardens carefully, removing unwanted algae and protecting the tastiest seaweeds for food. But one day, the enemy arrives, sea urchins, armed with hundreds of sharp spines, crawling in and devouring the seaweed, destroying the hard work of these tiny farmers. The damselfish try to fight back. They pick up the sea urchins with their mouths and carry them far away, sometimes even tossing them into another fish's territory. But sea urchins reproduce quickly, and before long, they return once again. Then humans enter the story, unintentionally becoming allies of these ocean farmers. When divers descend beneath the surface, they often notice large schools of damselfish hovering around rocky areas where sea urchins gather. Thanks to these clues, divers can easily identify the spots where sea urchins concentrate, and these become the starting points for harvesting sea urchins from the ocean floor. And now, let's return to the main story, the harvesting of sea urchins. In many regions such as Japan, Chile, California, and the Mediterranean, the sea urchin season typically runs from late autumn to early spring, when the uni inside is at its richest and sweetest. Harvesting is done entirely by hand. Divers descend to depths of about 5 to 20 meters, carrying a small prying tool, thick gloves, and mesh bags. They carefully detach each sea urchin from the rocks, because if the shell breaks, the delicate flesh inside can be ruined instantly. The work is far from easy. Cold water, slippery rocks, and sharp spines mean every movement must be cautious. An experienced diver may collect several hundred sea urchins in a single outing, but the job requires endurance and strong diving skills. In terms of income, the profession can be quite rewarding. In California, a sea urchin diver can earn around $40,000 to $80,000 per year, and sometimes more than $100,000 in a good season. A figure surprisingly close to the earnings of what is often considered Europe's most dangerous seafood harvesting job, collecting gooseneck barnacles. After being brought ashore, sea urchins must be processed almost immediately, usually within 2 to 4 hours, to preserve the freshness of the edible part inside, known as uni. At the processing facility, the urchins are first washed with cold seawater to remove sand and debris clinging to their spiny shells. Workers then use special scissors or knives to cut a circular opening at the base of the shell, gently lifting off the hard top. Inside, 5 golden-orange lobes of uni appear, arranged like a star. This is the most valuable part of the sea urchin. The next step requires great precision. Using small spoons or tweezers, workers carefully lift each lobe of uni from the shell, since the flesh is extremely delicate and can break easily. On average, about 10 sea urchins yield only around 100 grams of uni, which is why this ingredient is considered quite rare. The uni is then lightly rinsed in cold brine and graded according to color, firmness, and size. The finest lobes are neatly arranged in small wooden trays and stored at 0 to 2 degrees Celsius before shipping. In high-end markets, premium uni can sell for $100 to $300 per kilogram, sometimes even higher during scarce seasons. Leaving behind the familiar coastal waters where sea urchins cling to rocky reefs and kelp forests, let's head down to the icy southern hemisphere, where the seas around Antarctica remain nearly frozen year-round. Hidden beneath waters as cold as -1 to 2 degrees Celsius lives a remarkable fish, the Patagonian toothfish, better known in restaurants by its more elegant name, Chilean sea bass. With thick white flesh that is rich, buttery, and tender, it is often regarded as a treasure of the cold oceans, one of the most valuable deep-sea fish in the world. To catch them, fishing vessels must travel thousands of kilometers into remote waters, where powerful winds, heavy swells, and near-freezing temperatures dominate the sea. Toothfish live extremely deep, usually between 800 and more than 1,500 meters, so fishermen rely mainly on longline fishing, a system of fishing lines stretching tens of kilometers, equipped with thousands of baited hooks. These massive lines are lowered to the ocean floor and left there for hours before being hauled back up. Each haul can bring up fish weighing 20 to 40 kilograms, with some giants reaching up to 100 kilograms. Because toothfish grow slowly and can live more than 40 years, the fishery today is strictly managed to prevent overfishing. As soon as the fish are hauled onto the deck, they are processed immediately on board to preserve the quality of the meat. Workers quickly gut the fish and remove the internal organs, after which the catch is moved directly into the ship's onboard processing line. The larger toothfish are cut into thick white fillets and then flash frozen at around -40 degrees Celsius within a few hours. This rapid freezing method preserves the fish's natural texture and flavor, even though the vessel may remain at sea for several weeks before returning to port. Thanks to its high natural oil content, toothfish has a unique texture, tender, rich, and almost impossible to dry out when cooked. For this reason, in high-end restaurants, Chilean sea bass is often pan-seared, miso-glazed, or gently steamed, allowing its natural sweetness and buttery flavor to shine. From the icy depths of some of the coldest oceans on Earth, this remarkable fish has become one of the most sought-after seafood delicacies on dining tables around the world. Hidden in the cold, deep waters off Suruga Bay and the coasts of Honshu, there lives a strange creature often called the giant of the crustacean world, the Japanese spider crab. With a leg span that can reach 3 to 4 meters, it is the largest crab species ever discovered on Earth. These crabs typically inhabit depths of 200 to more than 600 meters, where sunlight barely reaches the seafloor. Because of this, they are usually harvested using deep-sea traps and specialized crab pots lowered to the ocean bottom. The main fishing season occurs from late winter to early spring, when the crabs move into slightly shallower waters during their breeding period. Once brought aboard, the crabs are often kept alive in seawater tanks before being transported to seafood markets and restaurants. In Japanese cuisine, spider crab is typically boiled or steamed simply to preserve its natural sweetness. The white meat found in the long legs has a firm texture with a delicate, slightly sweet flavor, making it ideal for sushi, sashimi, or premium seafood hot pots. With its enormous size and refined taste, the Japanese spider crab is not only a fascinating deep-sea creature, but also one of the most unique and remarkable crabs in luxury seafood cuisine. Despite their appearance resembling marine lobsters, crawfish are in fact just freshwater crayfish, with only about 15% of their meat found in the tail. While the bright red claws are mostly for show, the meat is tender but relatively bland and low in nutritional value. Yet, their low cost and easy accessibility have made them widely popular. On the other hand, their explosive reproductive ability makes them a nightmare for farmers. A single female less than 12 centimeters long can lay up to 600 eggs per clutch, 2 to 3 times a year. Even just one escapee is enough to multiply into a colony that can overrun an entire hectare of water. Combined with their habit of digging burrows as deep as 2 meters and their voracious appetite, from rice shoots and small fish to animal carcasses, crawfish truly become a farmer's worst nightmare. In reality, during the 1930s to 1940s, when crawfish were first introduced to Asia by Americans, especially in China, they were considered an invasive pest, notorious for burrowing, destroying rice paddies, and threatening harvests. Yet just a few decades later, the picture shifted dramatically. Once shunned, by the 1990s, they were suddenly reborn through the rise of street food culture, becoming a favorite delicacy among urban youth. Today, the appeal of this species is evident on both sides of the Pacific. In the United States, crawfish are inseparable from Louisiana-style crawfish boils, with tens of thousands of tons consumed every year. Meanwhile, in China, where production reaches 3.2 million tons, accounting for more than 90% of the global supply, crawfish have been elevated into a $60 billion industry, tied to the rice crawfish ecological model that not only restores farmland but also generates enormous profits. To achieve such staggering numbers, perhaps China has quietly thanked Louisiana, the land that gave birth to crawfish culture and inspired an entire global industry. Now let's step into the flooded rice fields of Louisiana, the birthplace of a rare and truly sustainable farming model. Each year, when the rice plants reach a height of about 30 to 40 centimeters, farmers begin flooding the fields and releasing juvenile crawfish. Young rice provides shade, while its roots offer shelter and natural food sources. Here, farmers enjoy two harvests in a single year, one for rice and one for crawfish. In the summer, they plant rice, which not only provides a staple food source, but also creates the perfect habitat for crawfish. When the rice harvest ends, the leftover straw and stubble decompose into natural feed, and farmers immediately flood the fields again to begin the crawfish season. This rotation not only ensures food on the table and crawfish to sell, but also maintains ecological balance. Rice sustains the crawfish, and crawfish fertilize the rice. But the story doesn't end with the rice fields. Beyond cultivated land, crawfish are also harvested directly from vast wetlands. Across the flooded fields, hundreds of traps set the day before lie waiting, each baited with fish scraps, sometimes mixed with potatoes or industrial feed pellets, to lure the crawfish hidden in the mud. The harvest unfolds in a precise step-by-step routine. The worker deftly pulls each trap from the water, gives it a quick shake, and the crawfish tumble into stainless steel bins with air holes, keeping them alive while preventing escape. Fresh bait is then loaded, and the trap swiftly reset in its original spot, ensuring an unbroken, efficient cycle. Every motion, from lifting and rebaiting to releasing the trap, demands speed and accuracy. Even the smallest slip could cut deeply into the day's yield. The greatest challenges come from the intensity of the labor and the environment itself. Each harvester must handle 500 to 1,000 traps a day while maneuvering the boat through thick mats of weeds and aquatic plants. It's work that requires stamina, sharp eyes, and unwavering focus. By late morning, the bins brimming with wriggling crawfish stand as proof of a tightly run operation, marking the very first step in the global value chain of this freshwater delicacy. After being harvested from the swamps, baskets of crawfish are quickly transported to the processing plant. Right after harvesting, crawfish are poured directly into large receiving troughs and begin their processing journey with the rough washing stage. This step is extremely important and almost mandatory in every plant, since the outer shell of this species is often covered with mud, aquatic roots, organic debris, and sediment accumulated from their muddy habitat. The system can handle 300 to 500 kilograms of crawfish per hour, meeting the demands of industrial-scale production. One key point is that crawfish shells are relatively thin and easily scratched, so water pressure is always carefully adjusted to a moderate level, strong enough to remove dirt, yet gentle enough to keep the crawfish alive and in good condition for the next stages of processing. However, workers must remain extremely cautious to avoid a prison break, as these crawfish are notoriously clever and capable of climbing or crawling their way out in the blink of an eye if given the slightest chance. After being thoroughly washed, the crawfish are transferred onto a conveyor belt for size grading. They pass through a system of slotted chutes or multi-tiered rotary drums where each slot is precisely designed to separate large, medium, and small crawfish. This process ensures uniformity, meeting different processing needs. Larger crawfish for export or restaurants, while medium and smaller ones go to freezing or tail meat processing. The operation requires speed, precision, and a constant flow of water to prevent thermal shock. Once thoroughly washed and carefully graded, premium quality crawfish are packed into insulated foam boxes, pre-lined with ice and sealed with moisture-retaining covers to keep them alive and healthy during transport. Each box holds about 13 to 15 kilograms of crawfish, sealed securely and labeled according to its delivery destination. From the plant, hundreds of these boxes are loaded onto refrigerated trucks and taken directly to the airport, where they continue their journey on domestic or international commercial flights. However, not every crawfish makes the cut for air travel. Those that don't meet the export standard remain in the plant, moving down the processing line to be turned into products for a wider consumer market. Immediately after grading, batches of crawfish are placed into large steel cages and steamed at around 100 degrees Celsius for 5 to 7 minutes. This is a critical step that firms up the meat while eliminating bacteria before further processing, such as meat extraction, packaging, or freezing. Under the effect of heat, the shell rich in astaxanthin, a natural pigment, transforms from dark brown to a vibrant red-orange, creating the signature appearance of cooked crawfish without the need for any additives. Each batch can reach several hundred kilograms, handled by automated systems that strictly control temperature and timing to ensure consistent quality, an appealing look, and absolute food safety. As soon as the steamer's whistle fades, hundreds of kilograms of bright red crawfish are swiftly moved to the packaging area. Inside the chilled factory, skilled hands quickly portion them into premium plastic bags, vacuum seal them, and pass them through automatic sealing machines. Each pack is clearly labeled, tightly sealed, and neatly arranged in blue plastic trays. From there, the entire batch is transferred into deep cold storage, preserving its flavor and quality, ready to set out and conquer dining tables around the world. Not stopping at packaging whole steamed crawfish, the factory also produces a wide range of value-added products, such as peeled crawfish meat, seasoned crawfish, and ready-to-eat canned items, all carefully processed to meet the diverse demands of both domestic and international markets. To achieve this, after steaming, part of the crawfish is packed whole, while the rest is sent to the peeling section for deeper processing. Here, long rows of workers sit evenly spaced at stainless steel tables, their hands moving with astonishing speed, snapping off heads, peeling shells, and extracting meat all in just a few seconds. What may look simple is in reality a task requiring near-perfect precision. A slight slip of the hand or too much pressure can cause the meat to break, crumble, or lose its commercial value entirely. That's why this step remains entirely manual. No automated line can replicate it. Experienced hands, having processed tens of thousands of crawfish, work not only with speed, but also with remarkable finesse, able to feel the firmness, doneness, and texture of the meat, as if reading each crawfish through touch alone. Stepping away from the cold steel lines and industrial lights, we enter the world of Cajun, where every drop of fiery sauce and every crawfish drenched in spice is the essence of fire, passion, and a culture that refuses to be tamed. In the culinary world, few dishes spark emotions as powerfully as Cajun crawfish, the iconic preparation of the American South. No need for fancy restaurants or elaborate rituals. Just a paper-lined tray, a few slices of corn, boiled potatoes, and a steaming pot of crimson sauce. After a quick boil, the crawfish are tossed into the sizzling Cajun mix, where butter melts into garlic, cayenne ignites with heat, black pepper tingles the nose, and paprika releases its irresistible aroma. Their shells glow red like embers, the sweet, firm flesh soaked in layers of spice, and even the small claws yield a burst of delicate, briny sweetness with every crack. This is a dish meant to be eaten with your hands, to laugh over, to let the spice seep into your fingers and memories alike. Because more than a meal, Cajun crawfish is a feast of flavors, of togetherness, of unforgettable moments shared with friends, where the aroma, the laughter, and the bold, fiery sauce linger like a warm memory that refuses to fade. The answer to the high price of stockfish begins with the Arctic Scray cod season, a migration of more than 1,000 kilometers from the Barents Sea to Norway's coastal waters, and one of the few moments each year when the fish reaches peak quality. At this stage, Scray cod has a high lean meat ratio, low fat content, and muscle fibers firm enough to withstand natural air drying. The core fishing season starts in early spring and lasts only 3 to 4 months, forcing vessels to head out continuously. Miss this narrow window and the cod moves past its ideal biological phase. Muscle tissue retains more water and becomes unsuitable for long-term drying. As the schools arrive near shore to spawn, fishermen enter the season using 2 traditional methods. The most common is gill netting, nets suspended in the water column and anchored along ocean currents. Cod are typically caught horizontally by the gills, minimizing body impact against the net and reducing surface damage during hauls that can last dozens of continuous hours. The second method is longlining, lines stretching several kilometers and fitted with thousands of hooks. While yields are lower, each fish is hauled up individually along a vertical axis, avoiding compression. Reduced mechanical stress prevents skin abrasion, blood pooling within muscle fibers, and structural damage, critical conditions for enduring more than 100 days of wind drying. All of this takes place in the volatile Arctic seas. On calm days, a small fishing vessel may land 1 to 3 tons of cod. On others, boats return empty-handed due to strong winds, heavy swells, or shifting fish stocks. It is precisely this uncertainty that has kept stockfish from ever becoming a mass-market product. Yet it has endured for centuries, sustained by perfect timing, careful harvesting, and a measure of luck granted by the sea itself. But the catch is only half the journey. Right on the deck, as the cod are hauled up from the icy depths, a small hand-processing line is already in motion. In temperatures hovering around -4 degrees Celsius, the fishermen work tirelessly amid the biting wind and spray. Each voyage brings in over 15 tons of cod, and every fish is handled immediately on site, usually by cutting the gills or making a shallow incision near the neck to drain the blood. This quick treatment helps preserve the freshness, stabilize the pH of the flesh, and prevent bacterial growth throughout the long, restless hours at sea. When the vessel docks, crates of cod are immediately transferred to the processing plant by the harbor. The chill of the sea still clings to their scales as they move along the first conveyor line, a short 50-meter path linking the ocean straight to the cutting tables. Here, the full processing begins. Each fish is beheaded, gutted, and cleaned with swift, precise strokes. Skilled workers use slender knives, slicing diagonally along the belly to open the cavity without rupturing the gallbladder or intestines, preserving the fish's clean flavor and bright flesh. Each worker can process up to 1,200 fish during an 8-hour shift, a rhythm sustained only by years of experience and muscle memory. The entrails are removed in a single decisive motion, halting internal decay, and the fish are then rinsed in seawater, chilled to 2 degrees Celsius to stabilize the texture. From there, they're laid on racks or sent to drying, freezing, or salting rooms, depending on the final product. The entire process takes only a few minutes. Yet every precise cut determines the quality of the catch that will become premium stockfish, celebrated across Northern Europe as the purest taste of the cold sea. From this point, the journey of stockfish enters its defining stage, the moment when its true value takes shape in a way no other dried fish can replicate. After processing, thousands of cod are hung outdoors on vast wooden racks, stretching for nearly 300 meters along the Lofoten shoreline, where the cold North Atlantic wind blows day and night. The drying frames are engineered with precision. Sturdy A-shaped beams disperse wind pressure and weight, while the high, open crossbars allow ocean air to circulate freely around each hanging pair, ensuring a natural yet meticulously controlled drying process. Because the body and head dry at different rates, they are hung separately, but all follow the same traditional posture: head down, belly open, allowing gravity to draw out moisture evenly. Over the course of 2,800 hours, with air temperatures rarely rising above 5 degrees Celsius and humidity hovering around 70%, the fish gradually dry from the inside out without ever spoiling. The muscle fibers tighten, proteins and collagen fuse together, forming a dense, elastic texture, the secret that allows stockfish to keep naturally for more than 3 years without a grain of salt or any preservative. When the fish reach their equilibrium point, reduced to roughly 1/3 of their original weight, they are moved into curing lofts to lock in moisture balance and flavor. Under the pale northern light, thousands of white cod hang in rows like an inverted forest swaying in the wind, monumental yet silent, marking the near completion of the journey from deep ocean to Norway's most revered delicacy, the legendary stockfish. When the drying season ends, the stockfish harvest begins. Along the long rows of wooden racks by the coast, hundreds of workers move in rhythm, carefully taking down each pair of cod hardened by months of wind and salt. By this stage, each fish has lost nearly 3/4 of its original weight, the body firm, the flesh translucent like amber. A light tap produces a crisp knock, the unmistakable sign that the fish has reached perfect dryness. The harvest continues for 7 to 10 days, from dawn until the last light fades behind the snow-covered peaks. On site, the fish are sorted by size, color, and dryness, before being moved to storage for final stabilization. The finest batches, pale, evenly dried, and silky in texture, are marked for export to Italy, Portugal, and Japan, where stockfish is regarded as a culinary emblem of the northern seas. And so, each season, nearly 2 million cod are taken down from the racks across the Lofoten Islands, completing the long, disciplined cycle of the cold sea. After leaving the outdoor racks, stockfish is still not considered a finished product. It is moved into curing lofts for another 2 to 3 months to complete the moisture balancing stage. Here, the residual water within the flesh doesn't evaporate abruptly, but slowly migrates from the core to the surface, allowing the texture to stabilize, preventing cracking, off flavors, and preserving the integrity of aroma compounds for years, the key to its remarkable shelf life without salt or preservatives. Even within the same batch, curing times can vary by several weeks due to the natural biological differences among individual fish. Although the surface may appear dry, slow-forming internal mold can still occur. For this reason, stockfish is inspected regularly by hand and scent, a traditional yet highly precise method, perfected through generations of experience. Only after passing this final stage does the stockfish qualify for export to key markets such as Italy and Nigeria, completing the journey of a dried fish that has become a true heritage craft. When it enters the kitchen, Stockfish is no longer a convenient food, but an ingredient that demands knowledge and patience. Its almost 100% dryness means every dish must begin with rehydration. The fish is soaked in cold water for several days, sometimes combined with mechanical pounding, to reopen the protein fibers before cooking. Once revived, the flesh of stockfish gains a unique density and elasticity, offering depth and character far beyond that of fresh or salted fish. This makes it especially suited for slow-cooked stews, where gentle heat and long simmering gradually unfold the proteins, creating a clean, deep, and lingering umami flavor. In Italy and Norway, stockfish often appears in slow-simmered stews with tomatoes, onions, olive oil, or light broths that highlight the purity of the fish. Meanwhile, variations pairing stockfish with potatoes are popular across northern Italy and Scandinavia, where starch softens its chew and balances its intensity, producing dishes that are simple yet remarkably profound in flavor. Yet, when it comes to dried cod in European cuisine, stockfish is often mistaken for bacalhau, the soul of Portuguese cooking. Both share the same origins, North Atlantic cod, and the ancient need to preserve protein for long voyages at sea. But they diverge at the most fundamental element, salt. Bacalhau is built on salt. Immediately after the catch, the cod is split lengthwise along the backbone, keeping the skin and central bone intact to maintain its shape during drying. The fish is then packed layer by layer in coarse sea salt, stored in chilled cellars for 10 to 20 days, allowing the salt to draw out moisture and replace it with a natural brine, a process known as salga. Afterward, the fish is rinsed to remove excess salt and then air or oven dried at 15 degrees Celsius until the moisture content drops to about 50%. The result is a fish with a softer texture, pronounced salinity, and a gentle chew, perfectly suited to Mediterranean cooking, where salt, olive oil, and garlic form the flavor's foundation. Over centuries, bacalhau has become endlessly adaptable. The centerpiece of dishes like bacalhau à bras with eggs and potatoes, bacalhau com natas in cream sauce, or the traditional bacalhau à gomes de sauce stew. Farmers use specialized tilling machines to loosen the top layer of gravel to a depth of about 10 to 15 centimeters. The goal is not to plow the soil as in conventional farming, but rather to restore the porosity needed for water and oxygen to circulate naturally around the roots during the next growing cycle. Soon after, water is gradually reintroduced in a controlled manner. The water level is kept just high enough to lightly cover the field surface. When the gravel is disturbed, the remaining fine sediment rises and is carried away by the current. Farmers then use flushing pipes to remove the muddy residue section by section, ensuring that the accumulated debris is cleared without disturbing the layered structure beneath, an essential element that keeps the field's natural drainage system stable. As the water slowly becomes clear again, the final adjustments begin. The field surface is leveled using long grading boards, but the flatness required here is highly technical. The bed must maintain a microslope of roughly 1 to 3 millimeters per meter, just enough to keep the water flowing steadily without causing erosion or forming localized whirlpools. Once everything is complete, water is allowed to flow steadily through the field for several days as a final system check. Farmers carefully observe the water clarity, the direction of the current, and how the gravel surface responds. Only when all conditions reach a delicate balance, clear water, even flow, and no stagnant zones, is the field considered ready for another growing cycle that will last nearly 2 more years. From this point, the actual planting process truly begins. There is no rushing at this stage, because even the smallest mistake can affect the entire 18-24-month growing cycle that follows. Instead of placing the seedlings immediately, Farmers first mark each planting spot by setting specialized plastic rings across the surface of the field. Each ring is spaced about 20 centimeters apart, roughly the width of an adult hand, forming a straight, evenly distributed grid across the entire bed. This spacing is close enough to maximize land use, yet wide enough to allow water to flow smoothly between plants without creating stagnant pockets or small whirlpools. Once the positions are set, the gravel inside each ring is carefully adjusted by hand to form a shallow depression about 3 to 5 centimeters deep. The seedling is then placed so that the root collar sits level with or slightly above the gravel surface, ensuring the roots remain fully exposed to the flowing water while avoiding burial in oxygen-poor conditions. Only when every planting hole is set at the correct depth, spaced properly, and surrounded by evenly distributed flowing water is the field finally considered fully planted and ready for the long growing cycle ahead. After nearly 2 years, the moment of harvest finally arrives, the time when patience is put to the ultimate test. What many people don't realize is that the part of wasabi we enjoy is not actually the root. It is the rhizome, a swollen stem that grows just above the root system. This is where the plant's signature pungent flavor is concentrated. The rhizome is crisp and extremely fragile, which is why harvesting cannot be mechanized and must be done entirely by hand. Farmers step directly into the cold stream water, carefully feeling for each plant and gently pulling it from the gravel bed without damaging the delicate rhizome. Even the smallest crack or scratch can break the thin outer skin, triggering oxidation enzymes that quickly turn the rhizome dark and rob it of its refined flavor. Once harvested, the first step is sorting and trimming, a process that requires almost obsessive precision. Using specialized knives, farmers remove the fine roots and aged outer skin, keeping only the central rhizome that meets strict standards for size and firmness. In fact, around 30% of the total harvest is typically discarded at this stage to ensure that only the highest quality rhizomes reach the market. This step is not merely cosmetic. Trimming helps keep the surface dry, preventing excess moisture from diluting the plant's characteristic heat, while also reducing the risk of mold during storage. Next, the prepared rhizomes enter the cleaning stage, a critical step for export. Instead of harsh brushing, farmers use high-pressure water jets designed specifically for this purpose. These streams are carefully calibrated to reach deep into the crevices of the rhizome, removing the fine layers of sediment accumulated during 2 years of growth, while preserving the delicate outer skin. If not cleaned thoroughly, remaining particles of mud can harbor bacteria that accelerate internal decay during transportation. From here, the wasabi is carefully packed into insulated foam containers. Each rhizome is placed neatly with enough space to prevent pressure or damage to its fragile structure. Under these carefully controlled conditions, the wasabi can maintain peak freshness for up to 72 hours, preserving the moist texture and vibrant flavor that has traveled all the way from the clear mountain streams of Izu to the diner's plate. But before we experience the authentic flavor of fresh wasabi, it's worth taking a brief detour into the world of industrial horseradish processing plants, the substitute that has dominated the market for decades and allowed the global food industry to cut ingredient costs by up to 90%. Unlike wasabi, an extremely demanding plant that requires pristine flowing water and tightly controlled growing conditions, horseradish thrives in dry soil, grows quickly, and adapts easily to different environments. Structurally, horseradish roots are opaque white, larger, rougher, and covered with numerous side roots, quite different from the smooth rhizome of Japanese wasabi. While a mature wasabi rhizome typically weighs 150 to 200 grams, a horseradish root can grow several times heavier in roughly half the time. So what exactly is the secret behind this so-called fake wasabi? The bright green condiment we often mistake for wasabi in mass-produced tubes usually begins with horseradish powder. This powder is then blended with starch, mustard, and green food coloring to recreate the familiar color and texture. The result is a thick, smooth paste with a sharp heat that shoots straight up the nose, a direct chemical reaction caused by the high concentration of allyl isothiocyanate found in horseradish and mustard. This pungency is noticeably different from the flavor of real wasabi, which is cleaner, slightly sweet, and more delicate, spreading gently across the palate before fading quickly. From an economic perspective, the difference is even more striking. Premium fresh wasabi can cost anywhere between $100 and $300 per kilogram, while industrial horseradish powder may cost restaurant owners less than $2 per kilogram of finished product. This enormous price gap explains why most casual dining establishments rely on the substitute rather than serving the rare and expensive agricultural product that is authentic wasabi.